So during Donald Trump's press conference, he mentioned the Russian story. Of course, he was asked about it. Hey, there were people that are connected to you, both in the campaign and business interests that you might have, that were apparently talking to Russian intelligence agents. So how do you feel about that? So, and how do you respond to it? Once you got past the avalanche of fake news that he cried out, even though he acknowledges, yes, it was in the New York Times, and he calls it discredited, as you'll see in a second, but it was never discredited. He just made that part up. Let me read you one of his quotes, and then I'll show you what he said about one of the individuals, and then I'll show you the reality, okay? So he said, how many times do I have to answer this question? Russia is a ruse. I have nothing to do with Russia. I haven't made a phone call to Russia in years. I don't speak to people in Russia. Not that I wouldn't. I just have nobody to speak to. I have nothing to do with Russia. To the best of my knowledge, no person that I deal with does. Now, as John has pointed out during our coverage of this press conference, he just spoke to Putin, what, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, I think.
So you haven't spoken to anybody in Russia in years. Okay, we'll chalk it up to, again, he's a child and he just forgot that, or doesn't count that. He means that I didn't speak to anybody in Russia about illicit activities. Yeah. Right? But at the end, he said, to the best of my knowledge, and so by the way, that's a lawyerly talk, even this child knew to put that in there because he has to be really careful about this. To the best of my knowledge, no person that I deal with does. Now, but wait a minute. There was 4 people mentioned in that New York Times story: Manafort, Flynn, and one other business and political friend that he has that I think might be very important to this whole proceedings, and then Roger Stone. Now, Roger Stone, he's known for a long time, as you're about to see in a second. But listen to him deny that not only did these people not talk to Russia, although how would he know that, but that he doesn't even know them. Wait a minute, you don't know Roger Stone? Okay, first let's give you Donald Trump's answer.
The prevailing New York Times wrote a big, long front-page story yesterday. And it was very much discredited, as you know. It's a joke. And the people mentioned the story. I noticed they were on television today saying they never even spoke to Russia. They weren't even a part, really. I mean, there was such a minor part. I hadn't spoken to them. I think the one person, I don't think I've ever spoken to him. I don't think I've ever met him. And he actually said he was a very low-level member of, I think, a committee for a short period of time. I don't think I ever met him. Now, it's possible that I walked into a room and he was sitting there, but I don't think I ever met him. I didn't talk to him ever, and he thought it was a joke.
So the way that he speaks, it's almost impossible to determine what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah.
So could he be talking about somebody else other than Roger Stone? I suppose that's possible. So the people that are on TV today. Okay. Who's on TV today talking about this? So if he's referring to Roger Stone, that is the most brazen lie I've ever seen, because Roger Stone has been integral in his rise. In fact, we have footage of one of our reporters, Amiki Khan, during the inauguration. She went to one of the balls and she recorded Roger Stone talking about how well he knows Donald Trump. Listen to the whole story here.
How'd you meet Donald Trump for the first time?
Through Roy Cohn.
Really? You did?
Yeah,
What happened?
Roy was his lawyer. I was sent to New York to work on the Reagan campaign. They gave me this card file of the Reagan's friends. There was a card in there for Roy. I was, 25 years old. I just called him up. Said I wanted to come see you. And I said I needed to organize a finance committee for Reagan. He said, you need Fred Trump. You need Fred and his son Donald. They're perfect for this. So he set me up with Donald. We hit it off, and that was it.
How old was Donald then?
32, maybe? I don't know, about it now. This would have been 1979.
Did you feel like he was going somewhere? Yeah. Is it true what people say you convinced him to run for president?
Yes.
You convinced Donald Trump to run for
I
president?
started in 1988.
That is true.
You were there?
I've been trying to do this. I've been trying to get him to run for a long time. Tried to get him run in 88, tried to get him run in 2000, tried to get him run in 2012. He could have beaten Romney, although Romney had a long head start.
So this is very interesting because of the 4 people that had contact with Russia, according to the New York Times, One of them is Mike Flynn. He can't possibly say he doesn't know Mike Flynn. He was his national security advisor. The other was Manafort. He can't possibly say he doesn't know Manafort. That was his campaign manager. There's two left, Carter Page and Roger Stone. So it's unclear to me from his press conference which of those two he was referring to. If he's talking about Carter Page, well, people should investigate that and figure that out. But a reporter should ask him, wait, did you mean Roger Stone? Because if he meant Roger Stone, he's an even bigger liar than we realize. Because there's no question that he knows Roger Stone really, really well, as Roger Stone just showed you in a recording from the inauguration. And by the way, it's not, we didn't break that story. We did because it was an interesting tape, and I'm glad we got it on tape. But that's their connections that go back decades is very well known. If he's denying that he knows Roger Stone, wow, that's amazing. That's almost like saying, my wife, I've never met my wife. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, it's certainly a lie. It's also understandable. If I knew him, I'd deny it.
Well, that is certainly true too. But that'll give us a sense of his pathology. If he says he's never met Roger Stone, maybe he was in a room with him once.
Yeah.
That goes to show there isn't anything he wouldn't lie about. And I'm not sure he understands the difference between a lie and the truth.
Yeah, and I don't think he understands the potential consequences. I mean, these investigations are still ongoing. The FBI, probably the CIA, the NSA are doing these investigations. They're looking at the transcripts, they're talking to people, tracking out information, and every day he goes out and representatives of his administration go out and they say things that are easily verifiable. And it can be shown that he's lying. And you're just helping to build the case on the weird connection between your administration and Russia. And he's doing it in every one of these press conferences.
Just real quick question from anyone who gets in contact with Trump. If one of our reporters do, we'll certainly ask him. A very benign question. Do you know Roger Stone? If he says he doesn't know Roger Stone, who's now connected to apparently these Russian intelligence agents, according to the New York Times, and Stone denies that, but they've got good evidence of it. If he says he doesn't know Roger Stone, that's amazing and gives you a sense of the pathology. You can help hire investigative reporters that'll chase down stories no one else will. Be the media. TYTnetwork.com/go.